Episode 6 of it. Welcome to Derry gives us a twist that completely reframes Stephen King's entire horror universe. And even though the reveal about Ingrid Kersh's past was massive, the episode still wasn't done dropping bombs. The real shock came right after, when a violent group of armed white supremacists stormed the black spot, turning the emotional tension into outright terror. Before everything exploded, we learned a heartbreaking truth from Will's mother, Charlotte. She had secretly been hiding Hank, Ronnie's father, inside the black spot. Hank had escaped prison, and Charlotte knew that if the racist townspeople got their hands on him, they'd lynch him without a second thought. He hadn't committed the murders he was accused of, but because he'd been involved with a white woman, he couldn't come forward to clear his name. That alone tells you how stacked the odds were against him. But the story gets even darker when the identity of that woman is revealed. The person Hank had the affair with was none other than Mrs. Kersh. Yes, that Mrs. Kersh, someone fully aligned with Pennywise and more than willing to betray Hank the moment it benefited her. She snitched to the sheriff told the local mob, and suddenly a pack of armed bigots was at the black spot looking to spill blood. If you caught yourself yelling at the screen, you definitely weren't alone. And if you did, tell me down below, because this storyline was brutal. And while Hank's story and Ronnie's heartbreak are tragic enough on their own, the episode also quietly turns another Stephen King character's fate into something even more devastating. Dick Halloran, the same Dick Halloran from The Shining, has been a huge presence in the show, using his psychic abilities to help uncover Pennywise's location. But the show finally lets us see what this actually costs him. After the horrific encounter inside the Neibolt house, Dick is drowning in terrifying visions of the dead. His shine, which used to be a gift, suddenly becomes a source of trauma so intense that it starts tearing apart his relationship with Leroy. Through their conversations, Dick reveals something deeply personal. As a kid, his grandmother taught him to mentally trap every ghost, every threat, every horrifying thing he saw because of the shine. He kept all of that locked away for years. But Pennywise smashed that lock wide open in episode 5, letting every nightmare loose at once. And what makes it worse is that Leroy, not fully understanding the supernatural danger Dick is facing, keeps pushing him to use these visions to fight back. Meanwhile, Dick is barely holding himself together, numbing the visions with alcohol because it's the only way he can stay functional. Knowing this, The Shining becomes 10 times more tragic. Dick Halloran survives all of this. The trauma, the visions, the Neibolt assault, even the Black Spot massacre, only to be murdered decades later by Jack Torrance in a split-second moment that feels random and almost cruelly pointless. If his death hit hard before, the prequel reframes it as heartbreaking. Now we know just how much he fought to stay alive. And episode 6 adds another emotional gut punch. Because fans already know Dick Halloran lives long enough to appear in The Shining, his survival in Welcome to Derry is guaranteed. But the episode shows that the only reason he doesn't foresee the militia attack is because he's drunk. Drunk because he was desperately trying to dull the shine. His abilities usually let him sense danger coming, just like how he later warns Danny Torrance about the Overlook. But here, at the moment when foreseeing danger could have saved lives, he wasn't able to use his gift. And that creates a tragic chain reaction. Dick survives physically, but emotionally, the show strongly implies he carries the guilt for the rest of his life. The massacre was something he might have sensed or prevented, but his trauma was so overwhelming that he couldn't be present enough to do so. When you think about that, and then remember the way he dies in The Shining, after surviving horrors most people couldn't endure, it just makes everything feel so much heavier. If you felt this episode added a whole new layer of tragedy to The Shining or changed the way you see Dick Halloran, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the show handled his arc well? Did the Black Spot massacre hit harder knowing his future? Let me know what moment from episode 6 shook you the most.